I had several students send me an email asking me about this question. I thought I would go through the table and make sure that we understand what we're looking for. Ultimately, in this problem, and there's actually several variations of this, is we want to create a balance sheet. And as you see, the unknown variable is retained earnings. So what we want to do is we want to look at this from the perspective of a balance sheet. So as you see here, we have cash, accounts receivable, office supplies, land, office equipment. These are all assets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just bring these down, and we're going to create a table here that we're going to call assets. Now, the other items that we want to talk about are going to be accounts payable. Well, accounts payable is a liability, so let's just move this over to liabilities. And then what we have is we have common stock, and the other item that we have in the balance sheet is retained earnings. So let's just drop this down and see what we've got. So what we have over here in the top part, the remaining items, consulting fees earned, which is revenue. We have several expense items, and then we have dividends. Now, some of this relates to retained earnings, but there's a missing variable. If you remember from other discussions, retained earnings equals the beginning balance plus revenue minus expenses minus dividends. Well, when you see these items here, the missing element is going to be the beginning balance of retained earnings. But what you'll see here as we're going through this problem is all this information up here is somewhat irrelevant in terms of what we're actually trying to calculate. So let's complete the balance sheet here, and I'll explain what we're talking about. So on the left side, we have assets. So let's just make this nice and pretty, and we're going to make this bold, and let's just put this in an outline. And then on this side over here, we have liabilities and equity. Okay, so I'm going to make this nice and pretty and merge this, make this bold, and let's see what kind of answers that we get. Okay, so we sum the assets. So the assets is $74,800. Now, as we are considering the liabilities plus equity, liabilities plus equities always equals assets. So let's see what kind of answer that we have here. So we've got to pull up so we get this top number. And what we see is that the liabilities plus equity, with the exception of retained earnings, is $60,953. So the very easy way to complete this question is to identify what retained earnings is. And retained earnings is simply the $74,800 minus the $60,953. Okay? So again, the questions related to this table there's several of them. One of which is, what is retained earnings? Well, we now know what retained earnings is $13,847. And again, you would not be able to calculate it with these numbers up here because what we're missing is the beginning balance of retained earnings. I think there was another question related to what is total liabilities and equity, and that's $74,800. And I think there was another question related to what is equity. Well, equity is simply going to be common stock plus retained earnings. Okay, thank you.